So as to not hold you any longer than we have to, Chris, what we wanted to do today was just give people an opportunity to talk about the asset management applied activity that had to do with looking at replacing assets and, capital improvement planning, and then how would you ask, for funding, what kind of message would you tell upper management, that type of thing. We are expecting maybe at least one more person to join, but we might as well get started with you. And if somebody joins us, that's fine. We can just have them jump in. But if you want to talk a little bit about what you were able to do, either just in this past time since Workshop 4 or anything up to that point is fine. If you just want to let us know kind of what you've been up to, that would be great.
Okay, well, we've identified all the assets that have to do with hydrant, pipe, curb stops, and valves, as well as the pumps and the pump controls. We've got them listed on a spreadsheet, and we have that keyed to a map. There's a coded number on each asset, and we now have it on a map. The next thing we've done is we've tried to assess the condition of these assets. We have found some that are in pretty poor shape. We've got C factors for all the pipes. We've got 2 or 3 pipes that have a C factor of 20 that were built in 1924. That's when they were installed. And we've looked at different ways to fix them. I don't think the cash is going to be there with some of the restrictions that the town has on digging up the pavement. So we have contacted somebody that lines the pipe with structural plastic, and we have a meeting with them on March 1st to find out what the cost is and how it's going to affect the system, how long it will last, that type of thing. We had somebody come in and help us with finding leaks and stuff on the assets. And one of the things we need to do is have him come back. He found some substantial leaks. They've been fixed. He pointed out an area where we might have a leak. I checked all of the usage figures and the pump figures, and then used the chart from the tank, and they both agree we have a leak of 28 to 29 gallons a minute that still has to be found. The one that Jim found before, or Austin found before, he estimated at less than 10, so that has to be fixed, and we have another one that's fairly big. I think the session on the asset management was great, and we also got some information on how to get motors rewound and some vibration analysis. The problem's going to be organizing the money. I've talked to the board. We're going to be raising rates to pay for what needs to be done. Is there anything else?
I'd love to hear more about that. What kind of rate increase are you guys contemplating, or how is that process going?
Okay, well, we need to get a cost. We have some reserves. It isn't clear to me that the reserves will pay for what needs to be done. I think the reserves are currently about $80,000, and we generally take the pilot money we get, and that goes straight into a reserve. So that gets us up to about $130,000. So we're going to have to increase the assets going forward for the next 4 or 5 years to accumulate enough money to do the infrastructure changes that we have. We are replacing the pumps as part of uh, a prior grant, and those will be in by May or June, and we might have to do some stuff with some of the controls. One of the problems we have is that we don't know what any of the other systems are charging for water, and I would like a benchmark to know if we're high, low, or in between. The reason we got in this fix is we were about the lowest in the state, and instead of fixing stuff, we just brought down the tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
We've changed the way we bill. We used to charge most stuff on a tax and a set $200 connection fee that paid for all the water. I changed that to a very low tax and a charge for the water. So now we're hitting the people that are using most of the water. This is a college town, and they have turned a good section of the town into just housing for students. And students are not known for conserving water.
So you're referring to the 3-hour showers that students like to take, right?
Well, now we found out some students turn the hot water on and never turn it off. It stays on 24 hours a day.
Wow. That's even worse than what I thought.
So overall, Allison and
Jim.
What, James is it?
Jim, yeah.
Serrano.
Yes.
They offered some help from somebody to find the leaks, and that really helped. And we've gotten the leaks down. I've got to write them a note on it. The other thing is we're charging $9.20 1,000 gallons. And
Is
you
that
would think
on a month or a quarter?
we actually get the money in once a quarter, but it's
Okay.
$9.20 1,000. Now you would think with that kind of a rate that the people would fix the leaks we have. Out of say 300 connections, we have leaks after the meter that are approximately half of the connections. A lot of them are only 1 or 2 day leaks with small amounts, but some of them are pretty substantial. So we're attacking that from 2 points. One is the leak after the meter and the leak before the meter, and replacing the assets that need to be replaced.
How are you doing the leaks, the ones that are on the customer side? Are you just letting them know that you suspect they have a leak, or how are you doing that part?
All right, before we changed what we were doing, we sent everybody a letter detailing how much water they were using and if they had a leak, and we did it for the whole year. We did it twice with 6 months worth of information to give them a chance to fix it before we changed the billing. And since then, when we send out a bill, we tell them if they have a leak going on or have had a leak during the quarter.
Okay.
So, I mean, they've been warned as much as we can warn them. Now, we've had a couple of pipe breaks that we dumped 100,000 gallons at a clip into the guy's cellar.
Oh, wow.
Well, even if that happens, they've been billed.
Uh-huh.
If you have a leak and it wasted water, you're getting to pay the bill.
Now, if it's that kind of leak, do you guys rebate them the money, or do they still have the payment?
You mean if it's a leak? No,
Yeah,
they
like say
make the
there's a leak
payment.
and oh, okay.
We have not given anybody yet a pass on having a leak.
Oh, okay.
Now
Yeah,
we,
some systems rebate if it's a leak, they'll rebate the money back, and some don't. So I was just curious how. So that was probably a pretty substantial bill if they dumped that much water. That was probably a pretty high bill for somebody.
well, it is, but we found out the bad leaks are all in the dorms.
Okay.
You know, the houses that they're using as dorms, they're using that as income, uh, and they're paying a tax based on the assessed value, not what the amount of money is they're generating from the asset.
Mhm.
So I felt that, hey, that's you know, you're getting a break on your taxes, pay for the water.
Mhm.
And I think the assets they're in pretty good shape with everything we've done. We just have to finish up with some old pipes.
Now,
And I
you mentioned a rate increase. Is the $9.20 what it is now, and it's going to go up from there, or is it what you're going up to is the $9.20?
No, the 920 is where it is now, and we're going to have to increase it to finish up on the pipes.
Okay. Do you have any
And I
idea what you
don't,
might go for, or
not yet until we get the prices of what we have to do, and that we'll
okay.
have that on March 1st.
Okay.
I I don't know if 920 is cheap water. When Austin Deaver was here, he asked how much we were charging for the water, and I told him $9.20 plus a 10-cent tax on the asset valuation, and he thought that was really cheap. And I don't know what he was comparing it to. One of the things I'd really like to see is what is it per gallon around the state.
Jim or Allison, Jim and Allison are on the line as well. Jim or Allison, do you have any, I don't know if you guys have ever done any rate surveys in Vermont, if you have any thoughts of, how that compares to other places. I mean, I know in other parts of the country, the billing's a little bit different where they'll have a base bill and then they'll have dollars per thousand, and 920 is higher than some places and lower than other places, but I don't know Vermont specifically. So do you guys actually do that kind of survey, Jim?
Yeah, we don't, but the Vermont League of Cities and Towns did one a couple years ago, and that data was on their website. I can try to find it and send you a link, Chris. It
Okay,
included, sometimes they tried to break out water and sewer, sometimes they were combined. I will tell you, rates vary. They're all over the board in the state. A lot of systems, especially small ones, just charge a flat fee with no charge for volume. And in those cases, sometimes it's even as low as $200 a year, which is ridiculous. $400 a year is, that's pretty common in some cases, but that doesn't cover all the costs of providing the service, obviously. So it varies quite a bit, but most systems do have either a flat fee or at least a base fee and then a volume charge on top of that. I would say it might be a good idea for you, Chris, to take a look at a sensitivity, analysis on your rates just to see, where the money is coming from and how it might be impacted because of conservation and things like that. If most of your revenue is based on a volumetric charge like that. We'd be glad to either help you do that, or I know Chris Barnes or Glenn Barnes would probably be happy to help you with that too from the Environmental Finance Center.
Yeah, there's
okay,
folks at the UNC Environmental Finance Center that do a lot of work with the rates, and they have some rate setting programs, and I think they'd be happy to, do an assessment of your rates. It is a little different when you don't have the base bill. It's a little bit harder to compare. It appears that um, some cities in Vermont charge less than that $9.20, but they have a reasonably high monthly base bill where
yeah,
there's just you're already paying what was it, like 20 some dollars?
Yeah, it was 20 to about 60.
$20 to $60 a month even before you've used any water. So you couldn't make a direct comparison there, because if you're using, say, 3,000 gallons, you would charge, $18.60, whereas somebody else is paying more than that just in a base bill. So I think because you don't have a base bill, the $9.20 is actually a relatively inexpensive rate, because you're only paying that. So even, somebody using 3,000 or 4,000 gallons a month would be about 36 to maybe $40 a month, and somebody else who has a base charge of $40 and then a $3.50 per 1,000 gallons is going to pay, as much or more than what you guys are charging. So it is probably on the lower side, but it's a little bit difficult to compare directly, because you'd have to assess it, say, on a, pick some amount of gallons, like, 4,000, 5,000, something like that. And for a typical household, it's somewhere in the range of 4,000 to 6,000. I don't know Vermont specifically what yours is typically, but we see, in the arid parts of the country, it's more on the 4,000, 3,000 to 4,000 end. In the more water-rich areas of the country, it's maybe more like 5,000 or 6,000 gallons a month per household. But that's, if you had some idea of what a typical household used, you could make the comparison by, looking at, if you had this rate versus our rate, what would you pay? And then make the comparison, because I think it won't be like a real easy direct comparison. So just comparing dollars per thousand wouldn't tell the whole story.
We
But
could
it's
help you with
well,
that, Chris.
okay.
We could definitely help you with that, Chris. And plus, do you have an idea, Chris, what the average household bill is for your community?
oh, listen, I have a spreadsheet with all the usages on by address and by name. I can come up with that very easily. Jim,
Yeah.
you mentioned the name of the survey or whatever it was, and I didn't catch that.
Well, it was done by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns,
Okay,
and
all
it
right.
was on their website. So I'll try to find it. I haven't seen it lately. I haven't looked for it, but to see if it's still up there. If not, I can get a copy from them.
Yeah,
Okay, well, listen,
James was actually doing a search online as you were talking, and it is there. The 2012 Vermont Municipal Water and Wastewater Rates information does appear to be online still. So I think you could find that. Jim, you'll probably be able to find it just by searching for it. It does appear to still be up on the web.
Yeah. I would say, Chris, also I wouldn't get too hung up on comparing it to other towns just because the cost can vary so much.
okay, well,
But I
listen,
think,
it took us a long time to dig this hole.
yeah,
Okay, we used to charge $100 a connection the whole year, and you paid a tax, okay, and you could have as much water as you wanted. When I
Wow.
got on when I got on the water board, I took a look at it, looked at how much we were pumping, and I raised the rates from $100 a year to $200 a year, which was, 100% increase. Now, along with that, we had a high tax on the value of the house. And as I was going through what we were doing, what it amounted to is we had some people using 50,000 gallons or 40,000 gallons a month, okay, versus people that are, a single man living in a house or a man and a wife that are now 90, and they were using some of them as low as 1,000 gallons. And I just said, this isn't fair to anybody. So we've made the change. We implemented it in the beginning of last year of charging for water. What I have seen as a result is the water usage internally has come down. In other words, people aren't wasting as much water. And the other thing we've done is because of Allison and Jim, we've gotten most of the leaks fixed. Now, a 28 or 29 gallon a leak is enormous, and we'll find those and we will get it fixed. But
Mm-hmm.
water usage in general has come down since we've raised the rates and
Hey,
fixed the
Chris,
leak.
what's the tax component of your rate? Is that a strict percentage based on assessed value of the home, or?
Yes, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's 10 cents a thousand, which is pretty low.
And that all goes to the water system.
Yeah, well, what we're doing with the money is using that, what we will be doing is using that money to fund the necessary repairs that we have.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're going to raise that rate as well as the $9.20. What I've tried to set up is the 9.20 would cover our operating expenses, the day-to-day expenses, and that the charge on the fixed assets would cover the repairs. Now, it's not going to work out that way because we've got a lot of repairs to do yet, but that was generally the basic idea.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of long-term sustainability, you'd have to really look at the numbers, thinking about, if your rates are so heavily based on water usage, and then you have one large user like the college. I don't know how much, if the college is, a lot of the students are off
Okay.
campus.
Well, the
But
college pays for more water than they use. We have a flat contract that they pay X percentage of our total operating costs.
gotcha. Okay, so that's a fixed
And
component.
yeah, and now one of the problems we have is we are serving another fire district. We're pumping water to them. It was estimated when they signed a contract that they would use 25% of the water. And it's almost a flat fee, okay? And it doesn't have much of a relationship to the cost that we have. The problem is, since we put the meters in, I know exactly how much water they're using, and they're not using 25% of the water. They are using 40% of the water. They're
Wow.
actually they're actually using more water than Castleton State College.
Mm.
Okay, I mean the the people, and it's not that I'm a genius, but except that the people that were on the board didn't understand much about cost accounting,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't know where the water was going.
Right.
Okay, we've always used X amount of water. They assumed it was okay. Well, once you put in meters and you see who's using what, and you take a look at your cost, our operating costs when I showed up were about $80,000 a year, and they're up over $200,000 now, and that's without fixed assets.
Wow.
That's just fixing stuff that's broken. It's just, in the past, one of the things that I saw them do is they had a problem in the street, they dug it up, they found that they had a valve wasn't working. Instead of fixing it on the spot, they filled the hole back in and said, we'll fix it later. You just can't run an organization like that.
No, not very easily. Not without causing some problems for yourself. Do you know
Well,
the 10 cent per thousand that you talked about, is that like an annual payment to you? Like at the end of the
yes,
year they make a tax payment?
no, no, we bill it to them every quarter.
Okay.
So we have ongoing. Billing it every month would start to be pretty expensive in administrative costs.
Uh-huh.
So we're doing it on a quarterly basis. What we did before was you got one bill for the year and you paid quarterly, and we changed that to we're now billing by the quarter because we're changing the water rates, or you're paying for the water usage.
Okay, so the way this would work is, let's say your house is valued at 50,000.
Hmm.
Um, uh, so that would be like assessed value of 50 if you did it per thousands, and then you would times it by 10 cents.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
so it'd be like $50 a year that they would
Yes.
owe, and then they would get billed every quarter for that $50.
Right. And then they also get billed how much water you've used
Right.
during the quarter.
Right. So that tax is probably not generating you very much money then, I would take it.
No, it isn't. But we weren't doing much when we started on that. We weren't doing much in fixed assets.
Mm-hmm.
As we looked at the fixed assets and what had to be done, it's heart attack time.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be adjusted up
Okay.
to whatever we need.
I think it is worth sitting down, Chris, and looking at the sort of sensitivity of your revenues to changes in water use and things like that, factoring in the tax and how much percentage or Castleton State pays. You don't want to end up in a boat where you're really relying for all your revenue generation on water use in case there's changes in that, significant changes to where you're
Which,
losing a lot of revenue.
and,
And you know,
and
if you,
Jim,
oh, go ahead.
Jim, there very well could be a big change in water usage, and I would appreciate any help you can give me.
You know what I would like to do is I will send Shadi Escaf, who's from the UNC EFC, and he's the one that does a lot of the work one-on-one with the systems. And I'll have him get in contact with you. And what he can do is put your information into their spreadsheet and kind of work with you to kind of come up with, if you're you're sort of doing a base bill in a different way. So your base bill is essentially the tax because that's fairly stable. And then your usage is the variable stuff that's going to change on a monthly basis. So he could work with you to kind of go through, where if you change this, what could happen? If you change that, what could happen? If people start using less, what happens? And, kind of work you through that so you'll have a better idea going forward of, where to look for changes. Like, for example, looking at the fixed rates that you charge to the college and the other fire district, and would that be better on a per usage basis, or somehow adjusting those to account for the amount of water they use and that sort of thing. But I'm sure he would be very willing to work with you, and so if you're interested, I'll just have him contact you
Yes.
directly and you can start working with him.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I would enjoy that. The way this rate was come up with was more responding to charging two people in a house that weren't using much water the same fee that we were charging a house that had 15 students in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Which I didn't like. And then when we got the water usage numbers, and somebody that's paying $1,000 is using 1,000 or 2,000 gallons a month, compared to somebody that's using 30,000 gallons a month, and they're both paying the same amount for the water, I thought was one of the most unfair things I've ever seen.
And I would agree with you from an equity position. We generally, for equity reasons, don't like flat rates. I know there are others who, for simplicity's sake, like them, and they're relatively stable in that everybody's paying the same rate. The problem is that they don't really, as you pointed out, people are paying the same whether they're paying a lot or a little, and that's not the fairest way to bill people. I mean, if everybody uses about the same amount of water, it can work, but when you have a pretty good discrepancy between the usage, it can lead to some issues. And then it also doesn't have as much bearing on the actual costs that the system has. So the system has some sunk costs that are the same all the time, and then they have these variable costs that will change, electricity, chemicals, that type of thing, that change based on how much water you produce. And when you only bill a flat fee, you're not kind of taking that sort of thing into account. So I think in general, going off the idea that if you want to have any conservation at all, you have to pretty much bill based on usage, or people, as you've seen, really don't like to conserve. So you get conservation that way, and you also get maybe a more equitable distribution of charges instead of, everybody's going to pay the same, whether you have, one kid, no kids, 20 kids, whether you have a pool, whether you have, a big garden out the back, no matter what you're doing, when everybody pays the same, it does create some equity issues that, as you've kind of seen. So I think you're probably on the right track to have a rate that's based on usage, but Shadi can work with you on, maybe ideas of, whether you want to consider a base bill or not, or how to look at that 10 cents per thousand, which in effect becomes your base bill. So maybe it would help to kind of look at it that way and say, well, you are doing sort of a base bill and a volumetric charge, and you're almost using it in a fixed and variable way by saying, okay, we want to use one to fix our system and the other one to operate it. So perhaps just looking at it in a slightly different way to see, is 10 cents the right amount, or would it be better if it's, 50 cents or, whatever that should be. I think he'd be able to work with you to kind of, assess where you are and where you want to go and maybe give you some options.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
No problem.
There's one other thing. We should have a very, very low-cost system to operate. We don't treat the water. We only use the chlorine when we have a coliform hit. We might have to start treating it because it's a little bit hard or acidic. But it should be cheap. You have a motor, it goes on, it pumps the water. We don't have a lot of fixing. We don't have to clean the water or do anything else. So it should be fairly cost effective to run. And maybe when we get the fixed assets up to date and get stuff working right, that the price will come down.
Well, I would just say maybe don't go in with that thought, but if that happens, wouldn't be a bad thing. But what you want to avoid is to get in another situation like you were in when you took over. So what you want to try to avoid is the situation where we got over this hurdle, we got some new stuff, and so for a short period of time, relative to the life of the assets, we're talking when we say short, like maybe 10 years, 15 years, you won't have to make a significant investment, but as time moves on, you're going to have to start replacing things like meters and maybe valves and hydrants and that kind of thing. So you want to be a little careful about, just getting over the hurdle and then wanting to lower the rate, as opposed to let's get over the hurdle and then let's see what we need to put away for longer term investment so that when, maybe 50 years down the road, if we have to replace a bunch more pipe, there's some money in the bank to do that. So
well,
I always
listen,
like to
it's
caution
not
people
50 years. It's not 50 years. I want to get 100 years out of that pipe.
Okay. So in that, it's usually a cautionary tale not to be real quick about lowering rates once you get them up where they need to be. That's all I'm cautioning, is to be a little careful about right away wanting to drop the rates. But I think you're headed in the right direction, looking at getting a stable financial footing for the water utility and making sure that you can replace the things that need to be replaced and get it up to, the standards it needs to be. And then after that, I would take a little bit of time before I would want to go backwards and kind of reduce the rates, because you don't want the system to get in a bad shape later, because they can't do the maintenance or they can't keep up with things. So that's all I'm saying, is just be a little cautious about trying to go back down once you get the rates where you think they need to be.
Hey, Chris, was that tax, one other question on the tax clarification, that's billed quarterly, but is that rate per quarter or per year? And then you divide that by
Oh no, that's the rate for the year. We just bill it quarterly.
Yeah, so if a household, say, is using 160 gallons a day for water, then your rate would be about $530 a year plus the 20, and if they had an assessed value of their house of, say, $200,000, then that would only be an extra 20 bucks a year. So really, I mean, doesn't seem like an outrageously high fee to me
Oh,
for.
wait a minute, wait just a second. Uh, you know, I've always assumed that, but I haven't checked the bill. Jim, I'm going to have to look that 10 cents doesn't wind up to be 40 cents at year end if you do it every quarter.
Okay.
Okay? And I suspect that's what it is, but I'm going to have to look now. What I've looked at when I was going through the bills was just the total we were collecting against what was outgoing. And until you said that, I I missed it.
Yeah, that would be an
So
important thing to know because that would certainly generate, 4 times as much revenue if it's quarterly versus if it's annually.
okay, I'm thinking of what I've seen on a computer screen at the office. I don't think that we're doing 2.5 cents a quarter, but I'm going to have to check. We're either doing 2.5 or 10 cents, and what I've been worried about is paying for the operational piece of the water, and I have to look at that. I just realized I hadn't looked at it.
When I just did the math that Jim was just talking about there, I think I caught the numbers you were saying, Jim, and it comes out to about $46 a month, which seems pretty in line
Yeah.
with the rate we're talking about. Now, that would be
Yeah.
assuming the 10 cents per quarter, but it wouldn't change very much. Even if you had the extra 60 bucks, it wouldn't be, that tremendously different. So that sounds right in ballpark.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, you've given me something to check, and then after I have the March 1st meeting, I have the cost of replacing a curb stop, the cost of replacing a hydrant and a valve. What I don't have is a cost for the repair on the pipe. And those pipes, some of them we have only 3 dead end pipes in the town that I can find. And 2 of those pipes are the ones that have a very low capacity. So we've got to do something about those. The
Hmm.
hydrants and the valves we repair or replace as they go bad. But that pipe is sitting there aging and it's not getting any better.
And so the price for the pipe you're talking about is like lining it, that
Yeah,
price
they
when you
come
come in
in
and
and they clean it out and they line it and they hook everybody up. And I've been told I want to hear it in a guarantee from the people that are making the presentation that it's good for at least 20 or 30 years.
yeah, typically on the wastewater side where the lining is more common, um, it's a really good deal. You get a lot of life typically out of a liner. It's generally much, much cheaper to do that than to do actually trenching and digging up the pipe. And typically, if your underlying pipe has a lot of structural integrity to begin with, it usually gives it pretty good life. So I would be surprised if it didn't give you at least 20 years more. I would hope for more than that, but you'll have to talk to them and see.
Yeah,
But typically, it's a pretty good arrangement where, it can kind of bring the pipe back to almost, you know, almost like new if there's a fair amount of structural integrity in the pipe to begin with. it really does rejuvenate those pipes pretty nicely. And if that doesn't
Okay.
work, the other thing that you can look into, if they can't line them for some reason, the other one to look into is pipe bursting. And pipe bursting has the same positives in that you don't have to dig a trench. You do have to have a hole to start the pipe bursting operation, but you don't have to dig up the whole street. And they just pull a pipe through, and the pipe bursting machine will cut the existing pipe and push it out, and then it pulls another pipe behind it and pulls it through that hole that the old pipe was in. So that gets you like basically a brand new pipe without having to trench. And I've seen
It's
them in
called pipe
operation.
bursting.
Yeah, it's called pipe bursting. And I think they can even go a smidge higher than the existing pipe in terms of size, but not much. So if it's like an 8-inch pipe, they might be able to do 8, maybe 10-inch pipe. But it works really well, and they just put this machine through your pipe, and it cuts the pipe and then pulls another pipe behind it. And I can't remember exactly how many feet it does at a time, but it's a pretty good chunk. If you're going on a straight stretch, it goes pretty far. So if the lining doesn't work, that would just give you something else to check into that would not require trenching.
Okay, I've got it down now. I'll follow up on that. Heather, one of the things that we're also dealing with that impacts our cost is the town has a new cut pavement policy,
Mm-hmm.
and basically the long and the short of it is they're going to try to use that to have us repave the road we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's more expensive than you think because they have one particular stretch of road that we ought to do something with. The paving is 8 inches deep.
Oh,
They,
wow.
they didn't, what do you call it, bull maggot. They've just kept adding layer upon layer of paving.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to weatherproof, not weather, floodproof the pump houses, we now have a road that's substantially deeper than it used to be, and that impacts our cost on the floodproofing.
Oh, I'm sure.
And when you're looking at replacing 8 inches worth of paving, we're starting to get, I'd rather truck the water in and park the truck behind somebody's house and they can get water that way.
Well,
So,
oftentimes utilities will say that the most expensive part of, say, a pipe replacement or pipe repair is the paving part. Like getting the cuts in the pavement and then having to come back and, repair that pavement can be very expensive. That's why I think some of these other technologies are
yes,
getting more and more popular, is because you don't have to dig a hole, or at least not a big trench. I mean, you dig one insertion pit, and then that cuts way down on how much you have to do at the end, which, again, if it's a huge part of your cost, and it sounds like it would be, you save a lot of money. So
yeah.
I would definitely
Well,
check into things like that lining or the pipe bursting or something where you don't have to dig up that pavement.
okay. Well, Jim and Allison, I want to thank you because you've been very helpful from finding the leaks to getting some planning started on what assets have to be fixed.
Well, thanks for all the work you're doing, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, we will get Shadi in touch with you, and then we'll just go from there. If you have any other questions, we're happy to help you on the asset management side, and we'll work with Shadi if he has any questions. But we'll get him in touch with you, and then you can have a chance to maybe take a closer look at your rates and what's going on, and he might be able to give you some advice as you
Okay.
move forward. So we're happy to help, and I'll get him in touch with you, and we'll just go from there.
All right. Thank you very much. And
Well,
Jim
thank
and
you.
Allison, thank you very, very much for the help you've given us.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks for coming today.
All right. Well, take care.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.